Finding the tomb of Alexander is the dream of every archaeologist. It's the Holy Grail.
For over 2,000 years, the final resting place of Alexander the Great has remained one of the greatest mysteries of history. The man who forged an empire stretching from Greece to Egypt and all the way to India disappeared into legend following his sudden death in Babylon in 323 BC. Ancient writers spoke of a golden coffin, a grand royal funeral procession, and a magnificent tomb in Alexandria that drew pilgrims from across the ancient world. And then, the trail went cold. Wars, natural disasters, and centuries of shifting sands erased all evidence of where the conqueror might lie. For generations, historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters have chased fragments of texts and whispers of lost cities. Some claimed his body had been stolen. Others believed it was hidden to protect his divine legacy. Entire empires rose and fell, yet the location of Alexander's tomb remained shrouded in silence. Yet in our time, after thousands of years of speculation, the mystery may finally be unraveling. Using cutting-edge technology, archaeologists have uncovered evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about the fate of history's greatest conqueror. The discoveries beneath the ruins have stunned the scientific community and reignited a debate that has lasted millennia. This is more than the story of a tomb. It is the story of ambition, empire, and a man who sought to become a god, and of the extraordinary discovery that may bring us face to face with Alexander the Great himself. From recreating the very voice of Alexander to employing some of the most advanced technology the world has ever seen, this is the journey of how a determined researcher may have finally uncovered the long-lost tomb of Alexander. Before his death, Alexander made an unusual request. He wanted to be remembered not just as a king, but as the son of Zeus Ammon, the great god of the Greeks. For this reason, he specifically asked not to be buried alongside his father, Philip. When Alexander died suddenly in Babylon, historical accounts say his body was carefully mummified in the style of the pharaohs and placed in a golden coffin. The plan was to transport him to Siwa, the sacred oasis where he had once been declared divine. However, this plan never came to pass. Along the journey in Syria, Alexander's funeral procession was intercepted by one of his generals, Ptolemy, who would later become Ptolemy I Soter. Around 322 or 321 BC, he diverted Alexander's body to Egypt, where it finally rested in the city of Memphis, a city that had been the administrative heart of Alexander's empire in Egypt. While Ptolemy controlled Alexander's body, many of the conqueror's prized possessions, his armor, royal diadem, and scepter, remained with other generals, including Perdiccas and Seleucus. In the late 4th or early 3rd century BC, Ptolemy II Philadelphus moved Alexander's body from Memphis to Alexandria for a second burial. Later, Ptolemy IV Philopator placed the remains in a grand communal mausoleum. According to the historian Strabo, this mausoleum was called the Soma, meaning the body in Greek. By 274 BC, it was widely known that Alexander's final resting place was in Alexandria, and his tomb became the focal point of a powerful cult honoring him as both ruler and deity. Recently, new archaeological evidence has strengthened the belief that Alexander is indeed buried in Alexandria. On the very last day of an excavation, researchers uncovered a remarkable early Hellenistic statue bearing a striking resemblance to Alexander himself. The find reignited hope and motivation among archaeologists searching for the tomb of history's most legendary conqueror. The discovery of the statue inspired the excavation team to press forward with renewed determination. Lead researcher Calliope Papacosta described the moment with awe, saying that the statue revealed itself as if offering its hand, a moment that blended history, faith, and science into something truly extraordinary. She said, "The statue revealed itself to me, almost as if it were offering me its hand. I prayed to God for clarity, to see whether the hand once held a spear, which would prove that it truly represented Alexandros the Great, the spear-bearer." The craftsmanship of the piece matched the style of the sculptor Lysippos, who famously portrayed Alexander with his head slightly tilted downward and to the side. Ancient writers such as Plutarch noted that Alexander often addressed Zeus in this peculiar way, gazing downward at an angle while saying, "I belong to the earth. You take care of Olympus." Papacosta reflected, "It feels like a stroke of destiny that this statue, long sought after by archaeologists, was uncovered by a Greek expedition." The statue, carved from magnificent Greek marble and widely recognized as a depiction of Alexander the Great, now stands on display at the National Museum of Alexandria. This wasn't the first major contribution Papacosta has made to uncovering Alexandria's past. In 2015, her team at the Hellenic Institute for the Research of Alexandrian Civilization revealed the remains of a significant public structure dating back to the Ptolemaic era. Among their findings was a carved tunnel buried nearly 10 meters, about 30 feet, below the ground. Papacosta explained the importance of the site, saying, "This is a remarkable discovery because it lies within the royal quarters of the Ptolemies, and we have detailed historical records about this very place." 2 years after the earlier discoveries, an even greater revelation gave fresh weight to the belief that the tomb of Alexander the Great may be close at hand. In a moment that captured worldwide attention, archaeologists uncovered the remains of the ancient royal quarters of Alexandria, precisely where Papacosta had long expected them to be, near the crossroads of the ancient city. Papacosta's excavation work is made possible largely through support from private institutions and sponsors. Major contributions have come from the Greek company Clio SA, the Egyptian Reliance Group of companies, and the M.B. Kabui Foundation. The National Geographic Society has also joined the effort, providing advanced electrical resistivity tomography (ERT) technology to help Papacosta identify promising underground areas that may one day reveal the lost tomb of Alexander himself. At the same time, another intriguing theory has been gaining ground, this one centered on the Kasta tomb in Amphipolis, Greece. This theory stems from the excavation of a massive burial mound dating back to the late 4th century BCE, the very period of Alexander's death. The Kasta tomb is one of the most richly decorated burial sites ever unearthed in Greece. Its architecture and artistry suggest it was built for individuals of great importance. The excavation began in 2012 under the direction of Greek archaeologist Katerina Peristeri. The monument is enclosed by a circular wall stretching some 500 meters, about 1,600 feet, in circumference and contains 4 chambers, all accessed through a grand and imposing entrance. The grand entrance to the Kasta tomb was guarded by 2 imposing sphinxes. Inside, archaeologists uncovered 2 magnificent caryatids, sculpted female figures standing as guardians, with one arm extended as if to ward off intruders. Deeper within, they revealed a stunning mosaic floor depicting the abduction of Persephone by Hades, the god of the underworld, along with a marble door leading into the tomb's innermost chamber. The entire tomb was decorated with symbols and motifs closely tied to Alexander and his dynasty: rosettes, suns, stars, shields, and Macedonian crests. But the most fascinating discovery lay within the innermost chamber. There, archaeologists found the skeletal remains of 5 individuals: a woman over the age of 60, 2 men aged between 35 and 45, a newborn infant, and another person whose bones had been cremated. Alongside them were fragments of a wooden coffin, glass and gold ornaments, pottery vessels, coins, weapons, and armor. The identities of these individuals remain uncertain, though scholars have proposed various theories based on historical records and archaeological evidence. Some experts argue that Alexander himself may have been buried in royal tombs located in Macedonia. This theory is supported by the discovery of a cluster of elaborate tombs dating back to the late 4th century BCE, the very time of Alexander's death. Within one of these Macedonian tombs, archaeologists discovered 2 chambers. In one chamber lay a stone sarcophagus, and inside it a golden larnax, a chest used to hold royal remains. One chamber of the Macedonian tomb was found to contain a golden larnax holding the cremated remains of a man, while the other chamber housed another larnax with the cremated remains of a woman. The walls of the tomb are richly decorated with paintings, sculptures, and symbols tied closely to Alexander the Great and his legacy. Among them is a striking depiction of a lion hunt, a pastime beloved by both Alexander and his father, Philip II. Throughout the site, motifs such as rosettes, stars, and suns symbolize royalty and divinity, while shields, helmets, and Macedonian crests reflect military strength and dynastic identity. Many historians believe the man buried in Tomb 2 is none other than Philip II himself, the father of Alexander, who united Macedonia and laid the foundation for his son's world-changing conquests. But this only deepens the mystery. If Tomb 2 belongs to Philip II and his wife Cleopatra Eurydice, where then lies Alexander's final resting place, some scholars propose that Alexander may have been interred in Tomb 3, a simpler cist grave that unfortunately suffered from ancient looting. Yet this tomb holds a powerful clue, a wall painting depicting the abduction of Persephone by Hades. Such imagery suggests the tomb was built for someone regarded as a hero or even a semi-divine figure after death. Adding to this theory are traces of a nearby shrine or altar, pointing to the site's use as a place of worship and pilgrimage. These details, its artwork, location, and orientation, have led many to believe this tomb was meant for someone of extraordinary reverence. Accounts from ancient visitors to Alexander's tomb in Alexandria shed light on its symbolism. The depiction of Persephone in the wall painting is often connected to Alexander's own journey into Egypt, where he famously traveled to the Siwa oasis. There, he was declared the son of Zeus Ammon. The painting also holds deeper meaning in relation to Alexander's death and his deification, the belief that he was transformed into a god after passing. To his followers, Alexander did not simply die. He ascended to Olympus to join his divine father, Zeus. Shrines or altars near his burial site may have been built by his successors or admirers as tributes, honoring his memory and seeking his favor. The name Alexander the Great has echoed through history as a symbol of unmatched conquest and military genius. Born in 356 BC in the Macedonian city of Pella, Alexander grew into one of the most extraordinary leaders the world has ever known. From his formative years to his legendary campaigns, his story continues to captivate and inspire. His childhood was far from ordinary. The son of King Philip II of Macedon and Queen Olympias, Alexander was educated by none other than Aristotle, the great philosopher. Under Aristotle's guidance, he developed a brilliant mind, a hunger for knowledge, and a passion for literature and philosophy. These lessons shaped not only his worldview, but also his military strategies. In 336 BC, tragedy struck when King Philip II was assassinated. At just 20 years old, Alexander ascended to the throne. Despite his youth, he quickly crushed internal revolts and secured his authority, proving himself a leader beyond his years. But Alexander's ambitions stretched far beyond Macedonia. His unquenchable thirst for expansion soon turned his gaze outward, toward the great empires of the ancient world. Alexander's gaze turned eastward toward the mighty Persian Empire, ruled by King Darius III. In 334 BC, he crossed into Asia Minor, marking the beginning of his legendary Persian campaigns. His first major test came at the Battle of the Granicus River, where Alexander personally led the charge. Though his forces were heavily outnumbered, his fearless leadership and sharp tactics delivered a decisive victory, setting the tone for the campaigns to come. The following years brought even greater triumphs. In 333 BC, at the Battle of Issus, Alexander once again faced Darius III. In the brutal clash, Alexander's brilliance forced the Persian king to abandon the battlefield, along with his wealth and even his own family. The victory established Alexander as an unstoppable force across the ancient world. But the true turning point came in 331 BC at the Battle of Gaugamela. There, Alexander confronted a massive Persian army in one of history's most famous encounters. Through masterful strategy and bold maneuvers, he exploited Darius's weaknesses and crushed the Persians. The result was a resounding victory that brought about the collapse of the Persian Empire itself. With Persia under his control, Alexander's ambitions only grew. He pressed ever further eastward, conquering new lands one after another. His army, the Macedonian phalanx, was a disciplined and nearly unbeatable force, supported by elite cavalry units such as the Companion Cavalry, led by his loyal general and lifelong friend, Hephaestion. By 327 BC, Alexander had marched into India, where he faced one of his most formidable opponents, King Porus. The clash at the Hydaspes River was among Alexander's toughest battles. Yet, once again, his strategic brilliance prevailed. Against all odds, he secured victory, cementing his reputation as one of history's greatest military minds. Deeply impressed by King Porus's courage and dignity on the battlefield, Alexander chose not to treat him as a defeated enemy, but as a respected ally. In a gesture that revealed both his pragmatism and admiration for bravery, he restored Porus to his throne and even expanded his territory. This act of diplomacy ensured loyalty in the region and demonstrated Alexander's vision of an empire that blended conquered peoples rather than simply crushing them. By 324 BC, the vast scale of Alexander's empire was almost beyond imagination. It stretched westward from Greece to Egypt and eastward to the distant lands of India. Never before in history had one man united such diverse peoples and territories under a single rule. His conquests stood unmatched, and his ambitions seemed to know no bounds. He envisioned not just an empire of land, but of culture, where Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions could merge into something new and enduring. Yet behind this glittering vision lay growing challenges. Years of relentless campaigning had taken a heavy toll on his army. His soldiers, though fiercely loyal, were weary and longed for home. Endless battles, harsh marches across deserts and mountains, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on their spirits. Though they revered their commander, their desire for rest began to clash with Alexander's boundless drive for expansion. Alexander himself, though still young, began to feel the strain. The hardships of constant campaigning, wounds from battle, and the pressures of ruling such a vast realm all wore on his health. Still, his determination never wavered. He pressed on with his plans for new campaigns, dreaming of venturing even further, perhaps into Arabia, expanding the empire to the very edges of the known world. But destiny had other plans. In the spring of 323 BC, while staying in the opulent palace of Nebuchadnezzar II in Babylon, Alexander was suddenly struck by a grave illness. At first, many believed it to be a passing fever, the kind that might strike after years of harsh campaigning. Yet his condition worsened rapidly. Each day, his strength faded. Soon, it became clear that the world's greatest conqueror was facing a battle he could not win. As news of his illness spread, his soldiers, men who had marched beside him from Greece to the edges of India, gathered outside the palace. These hardened warriors, who had faced death countless times, now stood in silence, praying for the recovery of their beloved leader. They longed for just one more glimpse of the man who had led them to glory. In his final days, Alexander is said to have summoned his most trusted generals and companions. Though weakened and barely able to speak, he summoned all the strength he had left to address them. With a voice faint but resolute, he whispered his last wish, "Meet me in the afterlife as good and valiant men." The room fell into grief. His generals, who had followed him through deserts, mountains, and endless battlefields, now realized that the light of their world was dimming. The man who had conquered empires, who had inspired nations, and who had been hailed as both king and god, was slipping away. On either June 10th or 11th, 323 BC, at just 32 years old, Alexander the Great took his final breath. In that moment, the ancient world lost a leader of unparalleled vision and unmatched achievement. His empire, though vast, would fracture, but his legacy, his daring, his brilliance, and his relentless pursuit of greatness would echo through history for centuries to come.